Tony Robbins says that the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. And yesterday, my coach asked me, in 1 year, what would you be really happy to have started, stopped, or shifted? And I thought that is such a brilliant question because it gets me thinking about what I most want to accomplish in the coming year. And the thing that came up for me, the immediate thing that just kind of surfaced when she asked that question was something I had been contemplating talking to her about, but I didn't want to talk to her about it because I don't want to admit that I do that. And that is stopping worrying. I intuitively know, and I know from my training that worry is not a useful habit, but it's something that has been modeled for me. My grandmother was an incessant worrier. My mother was and likely still is an incessant worrier. And unfortunately, I picked up that habit. And there are things that I worry about that almost feel like a premonition. Like it feels like this bad thing is gonna happen. And it feels so real and so intense that it almost feels like I am obligated to think about it and try to solve it. But what it's actually doing is it's stealing my joy. It's stealing my peace in the present moment. And it is negatively impacting my relationships with my family and my grandbabies and my kids, which are family. And I realized that it's stealing my peace. It's stealing my productivity. It's a really negative habit and it feels terrible. So I talked to her about this and she asked me to explain how worry shows up in my life now. And what I have discovered, and as I talked through this with her on the call yesterday, I realized it more and more. And that is that this worry thing is a habit. Whenever I'm idle, whenever I'm having quiet time and downtime, this thought will pop into my brain. If I'm busy, I do okay. You want to know why that is? It's because two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So when we're thinking about like our forward momentum, where we're going in the future, what we're doing right now, what we're doing later today, we are filling our mind with thoughts that have nothing to do with worry. And when we're worrying, we can't be present. When we're worrying, we're usually off in the future thinking about something bad that could potentially happen. Another way to think of this is as anxiety. I personally have never thought of myself as an anxious person. I struggle more with depression, which I think is kind of the opposite side of the same coin. But when I worry, I get depressy. And it's not pleasant. So she asked me, what would you like to experience? And I said, I would like to be present. I would like to be optimistic about the future. I would like to think about all the amazing things that could possibly happen. And I would like to be fully present with my family. So what I realized is that the worry for me is the worst at night. When I crawl in bed, sometimes it's almost to the point where as I'm getting in bed, I'm like, oh no, here we go. And so what I found, and just the night before I had this conversation with her, I had been in bed falling asleep and thought about just like some thought popped in my head. And I grabbed onto that thought and I started making it bigger and scarier and worse. And it felt like, oh my gosh, this bad thing is going to happen. It wasn't just me worrying about it. It was like something is telling me this bad thing is going to happen. And the reason I want to shine a spotlight on that feeling of premonition is because I think it's really common. I think the reason people worry is because there's a part of us that feels like if we worry about it, it's going to solve it or make it better or help us in some way or let us plan or figure out a solution for it or even prepare for it. And I think that's total BS. I think that worry is often a habit, and many times it's something that has been handed down to us by someone else, or it's just a part of our human nature. It's like an old, obsolete, prehistoric part of the brain that's sparking those worries. So I knew when I did this that night, I was having these horrible thoughts. My eyes are closed and it got so intense and so scary that I popped my eyes open and looked around just to bring me back to the here and now. And I knew that two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time. I knew if I could start thinking about something positive, I would be okay. And I couldn't think of anything positive. I couldn't think of anything beneficial to think about in that moment. And I can't remember how I snapped out of it, but I think maybe I just focused in on my breathing, which is a really good tip. If you're focusing on your breathing and you're maybe counting your in breath and your out breath, you won't be thinking about that scary thing that you were thinking about. So she and I continued to discuss this, and we came up with a solution that worked so brilliantly that I wanted to share it with you. So here is what I did after my consultation with her. I made a commitment to myself. I made a promise to myself that no matter how much I hated the idea of doing it, if I had those worrisome thoughts when I was falling asleep at night, I would hop out of bed and do this and tell myself I am safe. The person I'm worrying about is safe. All is well. And what that's doing is it's changing the 3 Bs. I've talked about the 3 Bs before, and I think it's the most powerful and effective and quick form of self-hypnosis in the whole universe. The 3 Bs are body language, breathing, and belief. So if I were to hop out of bed, I'd be changing my body language. I'd be getting into an empowered posture. When I sleep, I usually kind of sleep curled up in a ball. This is the posture of being a victim of, like, a bear is attacking you and you're curling up in a ball so that it doesn't kill you. Uh, and it's not a helpful body language. So I would shift my body language in a really dramatic way, which would immediately snap me out of that worry. And then that would automatically change my breathing, because I would go from like falling asleep breathing to wide awake breathing. And my third B, so body language, breathing, belief. The third B, belief. That's just what we're saying in our mind. So my belief at that time was something bad is going to happen. This is a really scary thing. So by getting up and changing, when you change the first 2 Bs first, it gets really easy to change the third B. So can you imagine doing this and worrying about someone? It's just not going to happen. So by changing my first 2 Bs, I would automatically that would make it easy for me to say all is well, or I am okay, or just something empowering in that moment. Keep it simple. No flowery affirmations allowed. So the second idea that we came up with was to create a note card and put it at my bedside of things that I could think about instead. So I didn't do this when she assigned it, but when I was getting ready to go to bed, I thought, I'm going to keep this promise to myself. I'm going to keep this promise to my coach, and I'm going to do this. And I wrote down things like imagining really beautiful scenarios for that person that I had been worrying about, or that situation that I had been worrying about. I wrote down some really awesome, empowering scenarios. I wrote other things that I could think about that are positive and empowering. And I made a list of like 7 or 8 things. And it's so interesting because the night before, when I couldn't think of those things because I'm in this position, all of a sudden when I'm out of bed, I'm making the list, I'm writing, I'm sending a message to my subconscious mind that says, I can do this. I can generate ideas. And I found that just by writing down the first idea, the second idea, I started getting more and more ideas until the point came where I thought, okay, this is enough. I'm going to put this down and go to bed. So the third technique that she showed me, I want to share with you. It's really interesting because she and I were chatting. It's the first time I've worked with this coach. I have different coaches each week as a part of this program that I'm in. And I mentioned to her that I'm a hypnotist, and she said, me too. And I thought, what are the odds? I never meet other hypnotists. And she said, okay, I want to walk you through an exercise that can help you step out of worry really quickly. And I'm going to actually walk you through it in the same way she walked me through it, because I thought it was so powerful. And then I'll tell you the aha moment that I had as she was walking me through this. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to find a spot to focus on that's not at the computer screen, but just kind of like at your line of vision somewhere in the room. And just look at that spot and focus on that spot intently and intensely. I'm actually looking at the same spot I was looking at when she coached me, because we were doing video coaching. And as you fixate your eyes on that spot, I want you just to stare at it and almost just allow your gaze to soften and relax, almost as if you could gaze right through that object. And as you continue to focus on that object, just become aware in your peripheral vision of the different sides of the space that you're in, the left side, the right side. Just noticing those things in your peripheral vision. And as you continue to stare at that spot, just allow yourself to notice what's above that spot, what's below that spot in your peripheral vision. Notice the diagonals. And as you continue to just allow your gaze to soften and relax, and you stare at that spot, allow yourself to just imagine that you could even notice what's behind you. You could notice a 360 view of the place where you're sitting. And just bask in the nowness of this experience. Notice what it's like to be here now. As you simply stare at that spot and notice peace in the body. And now you can come back to me. You can look at me and focus on me. It's all about me now. It was really cool because when she finished that exercise, she said, my coach, my trainer told me that she calls this, it's a peripheral vision exercise, but she calls it the shift out and shut up. And I said, is your trainer Melissa Tears? And she said, yes. So I just want to throw that out there. Melissa Tears has been such a brilliant resource in my life, and I'm so grateful. I'll actually put a link to the podcast episode I did with Melissa Tears below this video on my Silence the Imposter Monster podcast, which is my old podcast. I have a new podcast now called the Lori Hammond podcast. And I want to recap these 3 techniques. The first one is if you're worrying as you're going to bed, and this could also ring true if you have insomnia for any reason because you keep going and like thinking about things that are not useful for sleep. You hop out of bed, change your 3 Bs, change your body language, your breathing, and your belief. And as a way to break that habit of thinking about things that are unuseful as you're falling asleep. The second tip is to place a note card before your bed that shows you other things that you can think about that are useful. And you might even think about putting things on that note card that allow you to get into a place of restfulness and calmness and sleepiness. And then the third technique is peripheral vision. And sometimes that can be tricky depending on how dark your room is. That might be something that you use more during the day if you catch yourself worrying. But I was able to do it at night because there was light kind of coming in my room from the windows, and I could see shapes enough to do that peripheral vision, and it just made everything so beautiful. I hope this has been useful to you. I hope you enjoy a worry-free life. Know that worry is often just a habit, and you can break this habit. I have given you tools that work like magic, that are enjoyable, and that you can do in just a moment. If you like this video, you will love my answer room audio. It's a hypnosis audio that guides you to tap into your highest self, to the part of you that knows things you don't realize you know. It's not me brainwashing you. It's me unlocking your inner wisdom, which is inside you, whether you realize it or not, and helping you get a clear answer to a choice that you've been trying to make. I am going to put the link to that free to that free audio just below this video in the comment section and in the video description. Have a beautiful day, my friend, and I will see you in the next video.